food delivery business is that the ecosystem is far more evolved. I think delivery is no longer a retrofitted business. It's just not that, I want to start a delivery and then getting a business. I think the business has evolved so much. I remember from my own times in terms of few years, starting off my own cloud kitchen, the kind of ecosystem which you have is very different today. You have specialists in each of these categories. It's all about how do you leverage each of these enablers and specialists. So you have aggregators of the world today creating the discoverability as well as the last mile. You don't have to worry about that. Then you have, the infrastructure players like us today, who's focused on building state-of-the-art kitchens. How do you reduce the cost of infrastructure? How do you standardize a lot of things within the kitchens? So the flexibility increases. Then the brands can just focus on building great quality products. And then you have multiple enablers around in terms of supply chain. You have specialist supply chain players, you have packaging specialists, you have tech stack players. So there are different elements today available today in the ecosystem, and how one leverages each of them is very key. And the advantage what a dark kitchen provides is that your upfront capital investment reduces. Typically when you spend a significant amount of capital in the front end of the kitchen, you can invest all of that in terms of spending time on people, efficiency, operations, detailed understanding of the menu, flexibility in terms of the menu. In an offline world, if you have to change the menu, the cost of change itself is huge. You have to change a lot of collaterals, you have to change communications, now it's much more easier in terms of quickly change, and data is available much, whether it's pretty much available. Your tech stacks provides a lot of data. Aggregators provides a lot of data. You have your own data of understanding your consumers. So how do you leverage all of that and quickly adapt and make changes? Like today, you do a pricing play. You define that today my average pricing needs to be, average order value needs to be at 350, for instance. And then you define prices for various things. And then you suddenly see that, one particular SKU is not getting the kind of traction you would need to get. Try and experiment with pricing and see. Yeah. Then you look at, there is enough data in terms of the menus. And I think there was a time wherein you need more is good. I think today it's not about more is good, but you have focused menu. You don't have large number of SKUs. You try and create efficiency in the terms of SKUs. So, and when you're in an online world, your customer's attention span is also very less in that small space in your phone. So how do you really create that discoverability even more faster so that consumer comes onto your menu page, you want to convert them faster. So what kind of menu works well? So try and learn all of these things. And I think that's the key. And how do you standardize a lot of process? And rather than investing everything yourself, try and leverage what's the specialist enablers out there in the world, try and capture all of that. Because imagine if you're a new player getting into a cloud kitchen, you don't get the ability to acquire all the ingredients, procure all the ingredients at the right price and right quality. So try and leverage with a larger, operator and try and get the supply chain in place. I think that I would say, is the key to sustainability. Otherwise, and invest in marketing. I think today a lot of people brands feel that okay, I open a cloud kitchen and the business would come. Yeah. I think today you have discoverability in place, but it's your ability to communicate rightly to the customers and what it takes. And you need to understand your own unique advantages to bring in. And when quality of supply, quality of restaurants increases overall in the platform, I think that's where everybody benefits, because when you have great quality variety closer to your consumer, then the repetition of the bricks increases, and that creates a great, momentum for the delivery business. I think that's what I would say to create a sustainable business. And the biggest challenge, I would say, a larger point is also, I would say, is that today, having been a cloud kitchen operator, I've worked in an aggregator space as well as building infrastructure. What I feel is that there are different parties in this business. While the difficult part I realized is that one person's gain is somebody else's loss. Like for instance, if we say that aggregators would have their own costs, so they have to recover the cost, so they charge a commission. So if without that, they would not sustain. Then infrastructure players, we need to charge a certain fees to ensure that we are sustainable. And then your brands, if they increase all of these costs and charge everything to consumers, they would not benefit either. So how do you create a fair balance between all the three players? And each of these players categories, focused on innovations to try and reduce costs would be the key to building a sustainable business. rather than focusing on what you can, focusing on circle of concern in terms of what others are charging you and what is others happening, start working on circle of influence in terms of what you can do to make a difference. And one great example is the virtual brands, or how do you create multiple brands from the same kitchen. I think today, if you unbundle all of these different components of your operating mechanism, one is your menu, one is your people, one is your training, then there are different structures, different parts of the value chain. So how do you try and create a playbook, and how do you create a one operating platform to manage multiple brands from the same space? So then you start thinking very differently. Like when you create a pricing model, and pricing model doesn't change from whether you run a Chinese versus Indian versus a continental food. You try and understand what consumers, whether you are in what spectrum of the Chinese food. If you want to create an affordable spectrum, you know that what pricing which consumers would love. If you want high-end Chinese, you try and understand that, and try and understand what's the gap between what's there in terms of supply, what is there in the demand, etc. And then even working process can be standardized. Your supply chain is from the same person, whether you might have cucumber as an ingredient, or some paste, onions an ingredient across all categories. So rather than thinking of 3 different brands, think that I need to procure onions. Or I'm trying to simplify as much as possible here. If you want to chop onions, chopped onions can be used in all. So how do you see each of these components and try and create efficiency in each of these elements? So then you're trying to get more out of one. So if I am using one product of chicken, a fried chicken, what all menu I can create in different cuisines using the same ingredient? And then all of it comes in play. So it's all about creating a playbook and defining multiple brands into those playbook. I think that's what will help you to, and that's a unique opportunity with cloud kitchens, because you can experiment a lot and make quick changes.
I mean, superficially, it's the same sort of thing, right? But that's a bit of a false friend. I mean, I think ideologically, our view is that delivery and everything that goes into delivery is specialist, right? I mean, it's a bit like whenever it was 10, 20 years ago with retailers. All retailers said, well, we just have to do a kind of carbon copy of what we do in store and deliver it. And that's why they got steamrollered by guys like Amazon, who were specialists, right? So I think, a kitchen's a kitchen on one level, and we've delivered for ages, right? It's not new. But I think ideologically, it's quite a different thing. And that goes down to everything from product to economics to the rest of it. So I think the kind of watch out, if you like, here is that, delivery of food and things like cloud kitchens are very appealing superficially, right? Everyone knows they're lower capex, quicker to go, you can move them, you can change this. So I agree with everything Joseph was saying. Actually making them really work in a sustainable way is a much harder game, right? But it's like everything. I mean, I think one of the challenges of the restaurant industry is however bad the industry is, there's always a stack of people trying to get into it. There's low barriers to entry. Even now, people are getting into it. Can you imagine? And the same thing's happening with cloud kitchens. I mean, I think for us, if I take Wendy's as an example, right? We've done 26 cloud kitchens, about to do another 12. We spent 2 years really kind of worrying about the maths of it. Yeah. And that's the bottom line really for anyone, right? Because if you can't get a financial return on this, it'll be a bit of fun for a while, right? And your investors might get a bit excited about food tech or ecosystems. We like to call ourselves a tech-enabled food ecosystem platform, just because it sounds good, right? But the practicality here is, can you make your box economics work, right? And that's detail, and it depends really who you are. But I mean, I think the piece of advice, I imagine a lot of people listening on this call are in the restaurant game, thinking about getting into this space. I think the upfront advice we would give is, do your maths in really great detail, right? And then there's some basics of that. I mean, it's a long conversation, but the biggest things here, of course, are, are you going to get the volume, right? And that's tricky in a low AOV, low AUV market, right? I mean, India's only developing. We're lucky though, because it's underpenetrated and undersupplied. I mean, I'm sitting in London at the moment, and the competition's insane. Trying to cut through that noise is really, really tricky. So we're kind of lucky that there's undersupply. But the bottom line is, can you get the transactions? Right? Can you really get the transactions? And do those levels of transactions, you know, in simple terms, cover all your costs, including a pretty hefty delivery charge? So looks easy, is a good idea, is specialist, but I think you really, really have to worry the box economics in this, Ritu.
I think as far as whether a dark kitchen is a more optimized format for delivery or not, I think the answer is almost clear. Minus a few situations, it is definitely more optimized. But I think the key word here is optimized, right? And the optimization happens on multiple levers. One, what Joseph mentioned, for example, about how do you optimize your volumes by going through a multi-brand approach. You take a same cuisine stack approach, staggering different APCs on the same cuisine, or an ingredient-based optimization approach, and all of that. When you look at dine-in centric outlets, a lot of parts of their business model aren't optimized. So to give you one example, if you're open in a mall, the mall charges you X percentage for the sale that you make when someone visits the mall. It charges you the same X percentage when the stuff is taken out of the mall, right? And I think a lot of us didn't worry about that before, because for a lot of dine-in centric outlets, delivery was maybe 4%, 3%, 5%. So you didn't want to optimize for that, right? And I think it is a very opportune moment that itself needs to be optimized to a large extent, because the facilities aren't shared. No one is walking into that mall, right? If you look at literally an activity-based costing, if I can sort of say that, the cost on that particular consumer that the mall is incurring is much more minuscule as compared to a dine-in sort of someone who's dining in there. So I think that's the first level of optimization, but that needs a little more forward-looking approach. That needs a broader acceptance for the whole ecosystem to say delivery is one of the core businesses. It's not the only business, but it's a core business, right? If for most of outlets right now, it might be upwards of 60%, right? So while the business has moved from 5% contribution to 60%, has the optimization moved on the same pace, even when it comes to real estate, contracting, etc.? Not really, right? So I think that's one big sense of optimization. Second is, and this is, I'm mentioning this basis conversation with multiple large chains in the recent past, right? What many of us have realized that there are certain cuisines which have a much larger share when it comes to delivery. Let's take pizza, for example, right? And pizza will be 60, 70, or maybe 80% delivery in the whole market space when you see it. Now, when you try to create a great gourmet pizza play, one has to be content with the fact that you're still attaching yourself to only 20% of the market or 30% of the market. And basis that, do you want to take a call where you have a large, sitting format and you are not optimizing for delivery? So I think the second vector of optimization is that there are a bunch of cuisines which are very delivery centric, and the calls that you take in terms of your operating costs, in terms of your capex, etc., when you set up that, or when you sort of renegotiate right now format and rents, I think that's going to be super critical. That's the other sort of leg of optimization, I would say. And hence basis that what is the kind of capacity I should have, right? Third is a little more forward-looking optimization, is that we also see when a lot of dine-in centric brands convert to dark kitchens, their sales don't sort of pick up very fast compared to another guy who opens up dark kitchen, very similar concept in a nearby area, focuses and all of that. And I think the answer to that comes from what Jasper was mentioning before, is the specialization bit, right? I talked to so many restaurant partners. It's the same general manager who's optimizing everything on the restaurant operation side. He's managing all the aggregators as a side job, right? So 10%, 15%, or 20% of his bandwidth is going towards optimizing for delivery business. I think delivery business, given that attention spans are limited, there are low barriers to entry, one needs to take a more specialized approach, right? Is the rider taking 20 minutes to reach my restaurant? How do I sort of optimize for that? Because when people open the app when they're hungry, right? And that's why they need the food in 30-35 minutes. But if the rider is going to take 25 minutes to reach from the gates of the mall to the restaurant, then your promised delivery time shows as 55 minutes, and suddenly you're out of favor, right? So how do you optimize? How do you sort of create special focus on delivery is very, very important. And we tend to overlook this aspect so much, right? So to sum up, I would say, yes, dark kitchen is a more optimized format, but it doesn't stop dine-in centric outlets to sort of optimize themselves as well, but it will need focused effort along these three vectors.
I think this question that Ritu you're asking me takes me back to my Uber Eats times when restaurants used to ask us the same question. How do I get more visible in the platform, right? And this used to be the basic question that we used to face, especially when Uber Eats was pretty small and we're trying to build a market in India, right? And I think the answer to that is, there are two aspects to it. One is going online. So now if you take a step back, a lot of restaurants who are trying to go online in aggregator platforms aren't able to go online as well in the first step. Like, and they're not able to pass the hygiene checks and a lot of other aspects that come in, which are not, there's a barrier for them to kind of come on to the major aggregators in India, right? But the biggest counter to that is like, most of these aggregators have penetrated deeper, right? So we have deep penetration, and that kind of helps most of the restaurants, even in the remotest place, to kind of come online within the delivery radii that they're actually operating in. For example, in Uber Eats, when we were actually launching businesses, we used to kind of look at something called the big bet geofences. We used to look at a city as a cluster of a lot of geofences. And each geofence used to be, we used to go deeper into each geofence, into understanding how each geofence's selection of restaurants are, what's delivery radii going to be, and all the aspects from a geofence level. And a cluster of these geofences used to make the city for us, right? So what we tried to do is we went to a town and we kind of lit up Uber Eats in these towns, right? And where online ordering is unheard of. But at the same time, restaurants really want to kind of get onto the bandwagon. So I think getting visible on a platform or an aggregator at the first stage, even getting listed on an aggregator, is the challenge that restaurants are facing now, which with more and more restaurants coming online, like with more delivery online kitchens, like I think the aggregators are also trying to figure out how do they space these restaurants well. Now, the second bigger question is how, once they come online on an aggregator, how do they stay relevant, right? And that's, I think, to sum it all, like, everybody in the panel have actually answered it in bits and pieces. But I'll just put it into perspective, like, in 4 points. One is definitely, there should be a nuanced approach towards your menu or your catalog, right? So the major mistake that most restaurants do is that, especially when a restaurant gets converted into a cloud kitchen and comes into online, they just take the fine dine menu and put it on the on the online space, right? And that's basically something that we've been fundamentally trying to make restaurants think differently, because an online space, what a consumer, the same consumer might behave very differently when he comes online versus when he visits the restaurant, with his family or, for a dine-in setup. So it's very critical for us to define how data backed can we on in terms of designing or engineering the menu online. So I think a nuanced approach on menu engineering is something that is a very critical aspect for restaurants to kind of become more visible. And because it's all an algorithm, right? So it's basically based on ratings and a lot of other aspects which actually aggregators utilize to bring the visibility up, right? It's not kind of inorganic. And another aspect of menu engineering is, how are they actually constantly looking at which items are getting sold well, and ensuring that those items are always stocked in. So they should have a very strong inventory control mechanism to ensure that the main SKUs that actually work well for them is never stocked out. So there's something, there is a metric that we used to track called R by S, right? So sessions, like, number of sessions that come on an app, how many of those sessions are actually converting into a request, right? And many times we see that this R by S number, upward of 25 to 30% is considered to be really good, right? Which means 70% of the sessions that actually come on an app are not getting converted into a request. That's the real reality, right? So, and how do we improve this R by S? Because as Rakesh rightly mentioned, the barrier to exit for a consumer today is very high. because they are spoiled for choice. Aggregators are actually solved for discoverability. It's a very cluttered market space, like, marketplace. Like, you have different restaurants providing the same cuisine, probably in the similar price points. So how do you stand out? So I think, working on smaller aspects like the item's image, the item description, ensuring that the item gives a lot of description about what the item is, and being more transparent about that also helps us improve the RBIS and kind of make every person who's coming onto the restaurant to kind of convert into a request for the restaurant. So we used to kind of we constantly make an effort to kind of make restaurants understand how analytical they should be on the menu and the catalog side of things. Second is, like, when you go into a cloud kitchen space, it's very critical for us to figure out whether we are actually bridging a gap, right? It could be a cuisine gap. For example, we used to tell the restaurants, like, if you want to start a virtual brand in this area, Italian cuisine is something which is not there. And probably, why don't you try with that cuisine so that you bridge a gap and you bring in incremental customers because of that cuisine gap? So I think bridging a gap for the customer or solving a problem is very critical when you actually look at multi-brands or multi-brand delivery only kitchens. And the third biggest aspect which I want to kind of stress here is that, while restaurants are extremely obsessed about any technology that actually is consumer facing, right? For example, aggregators, for example, it's something that directly improves the revenue and gives them a new market, right? They're very receptive to accepting that, but they're not very receptive towards accepting technology that makes their backend really strong, right? Because at the end of the day, the backend operations optimization is very critical. And if you look at a tier 2, tier 3 market, 25 to 30% of the restaurants don't even have a POS system, right? So it's very critical for restaurants to understand that investing on technology, not only for the front end of the consumer, it's equally important to kind of invest on technology to ensure your backend operations are optimized, so that actually trickles down towards high level of customer centricity, because customers are no longer looking at just food taste and quality. Like Rakesh mentioned, like delivery SLAs have to be met. They should ensure that they're actually preparing the food on time, so that in 30 minutes, if they say that the customer will get the food, it actually reaches them, because that actually influences a customer to come back to the same restaurant and order. While food taste and quality is primary, the secondary aspects like delivery, optimization for efficiency, and all of that has to be high priority for restaurants, which is the change that we need to kind of work on.
This is a concept, which has been very unique to EatFit over the years, and some brands have started doing a good job over there too. So, there are two kinds of subscriptions. One is just a mix and match of the food which you make, order from your cloud kitchen, and you get a new box every day. It's like a surprise box every day. One day you'll get a rice bowl, other day you might get a thali, etc. like that. The other one is goal based. I'll talk about the first one. So, this is a product which is for the highly engaged users. Like Rakesh mentioned, there are customers who come to your platform every single day, every other day, and for them, to be able to buy in bulk, say, okay, I'm subscribing to your box, almost like the age-old tiffin service where you get a new box every day. And from a technology point of view, it's just creating your orders in advance. Basically, when a customer is subscribing to 30 days of meal or 7 days of meal, there are two currencies, 7 day or 30 days as of now for us. So you just take a bulk order, and in your system just block the next 30 days or next 7 days with the unique menu of the day or something like that. The other one is the the goal-based pack, which is either, I'll take example of weight loss. So weight loss is like less than 400 calorie meals. There are a few elements in the EatFit menu which classifies as weight loss or low calories. The range would be lesser. It would not be as high as a a regular tiffin box kind of a product that we have. And there, consumers will get probably 1 or 2 unique, 5 to 7 unique boxes every week. So it won't be like a daily changing menu. It will be more calorie counted, nutrient counted. Consumers will understand that the variety might not be the same because you're on a small, goal kind of a journey. So that's where we are. We've been able to build this service quite a lot over the last few years, and it gives us direct access to customers. So while a bulk of our business comes from Zomato and other platforms, but the most engaged customers who want to only eat EatFit or really know that they're coming to a platform to eat EatFit, they directly come to our website and build a subscription. So I feel this is how we see our business. For people who want to order singles, we want to continue nurturing a relationship with Zomato and other platforms. But for people who who know already that they want to eat EatFit and they order more than 8-10 times a month, for them we offer these subscription programs. So I think this is a great way of building it for other large brands as well. Otherwise, just competing on every single order with platforms is just not possible. So being able to give differentiated services like subscription on your own platform could be very helpful.
I think Ankit covered everything, but I just add two elements to it. I think one is, even when Rakesh said it, it's the engaged loyal visitor. And I think through subscription model, you are able to understand that engaged loyal visitor even more in terms of what are the nuances which the consumers are ordering more often, and then try and apply to the balance 80% and then convert that. So you keep increasing the pie. Second is having a combination of subscription as well as your on-demand order, which can actually help in terms of balancing your cost. You talked about in terms of how do you create a sustainable business. I think these are different modes. One is you create virtual brands. The other one is how do you create pre-order. So pre-order actually helps you to cook in bulk, because on-demand is obviously it's more expensive to manage because you just don't know the predictability of the orders, and there is a lot more focus on that. So you imagine if your 30% of the orders are coming in from your pre-orders, that's taken care of. It's pre-prepared, done, and a lot of what is there in the pre-order is part of the on-demand anyways. So one is in terms of understanding the nuances of customers even better, and second is the operational efficiency, I would say.
I think you rightly pointed out that EatFit was an important part of the CureFit ecosystem, where it was the cult customers, the cult gym customers also consuming a large part of these meals, and also the overall weight loss or goal-based customers consuming these meals. But post-pandemic last year, we realized that the consumption patterns have changed quite a bit. Where people were actually looking for entertainment at home, and entertainment at home would actually mean consuming food which is not necessarily healthy, but still really, really helping customers to stay sane, if I may say that. And as part of the whole rethink on how to build the business in future, we thought it's best for EatFit to be spun off, because that allows us to move into not just healthy space, but better for you space. Better for you space would mean all the favorites, all the popular dishes and cuisines which are out there. How can we make them better by using better ingredients, better processes, etc. So now EatFit is this two-pronged, it's taking a two-pronged approach. One, it continues to sell the healthy food which is known for, which is salads and smoothies and the daily Indian food, which are calorie counted, are nutritionally balanced, are designed by nutritionists more than chefs, etc. But the other approach which we are now taking is to also launch healthier variants of all favorite cuisines, whether it's a pizza or a Subway sandwich, something like that. So we're trying to just create popular variants and go ahead with it. A very large part of EatFit business was subscriptions from offices. People would not want to eat their typical cafeteria food and would want to order something tastier and healthier, and that's where a large chunk of the business came. Of course, that business has slowed down because of offices not being functioning. So we had to think of more avenues, and that's how we're thinking about it. So the same cloud kitchen which was able to churn out healthy food is now being able to churn out many different cuisines within the EatFit banner. So that's how we're thinking about it. Some of the data which we like, the internal data, about 30% of our customers earlier would be on subscription, or 35% would be on subscription packs, half of which would have a goal attached to it, whether it's a weight loss, whether it's diabetes, whether it's heart condition, etc. I think that number continues to hold as we also look at a completely new kind of customer who is eating more entertainment, if I may use that word. So I feel that the overall awareness of health has gone up a few notches, but it's more in the goal-based approach. So if I still say that people are looking to eat calorie counted food, I don't think that has gone up significantly in the last 2 years. But people who have a certain goal, whether they want to lose weight X kgs in X months, or they want to reverse the diabetes, it's a large program that a CureFit platform is launching, reversing diabetes, and we will be working on the food supply part. So all of these goals will become more prominent because people now realize that having food as a health element is very important. Earlier, it would just mean a crash diet or just workout, but I think health food is important. So if I take a 5-year view, I think health as an aspect of food will continue to grow. But I think calories is a very understated use or metric right now, which will take a few years to become very mainstream. So while platforms are now, beginning to show calories and all of those values, I think customers still don't understand it. I don't think customers still understand what a 600 calorie versus 800 calorie means. What should their daily intake be? But like I said, this is a trend which no one can deny will be important in next probably 10 years. And having building blocks of being able to report those numbers, being able to measure those numbers is very important. Something which EatFit has done from day one. So we'll continue building that capability, even if customers don't really need it right now.